I know we wish we could get a workout in.
Yeah, no, I'm doing like, I'll be 60 very soon. And so I've got some goals for when I turn 60. And one of them is to dunk a basketball, which I've done plenty of times in the past. But it's harder when you're 60, you might imagine. And then run a sub 60 second 400 meters and a 13-second 100 and deadlift 600 pounds, 6-minute mile. Probably do a backflip. I think I'll do a backflip too. That'll be pretty cool to do at 60. So,
dang.
Anyway, so I got to train for it. So I've got to actually lose. I got to lose about 20 pounds to dunk. Last time I dunked, I was 51, and I weighed about 240. So I'm about 260 right now. So I got to lean down a little bit. So.
Man, so I'm a huge fan, especially from your Instagram.
Okay.
That shit's hilarious, man. Every time you get those vegan posts, that cracks me up, man. But for everybody that doesn't know you, who are you?
Well, my name is Shawn Baker. I'm actually I'm a physician, believe it or not. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. But I kind of got interested in nutrition about 10 years ago for my own personal health. No, actually, longer. It's been about 15 years now. And as I started to kind of apply it to my patients, I started seeing some interesting things. My job was basically to take people with broken bones and arthritis or sports injuries and fix them. And what I kind of discovered was that if you actually fed people correctly, if you actually stop poisoning people, which is kind of what we do these days, that people get really, really healthy. And I was able to start canceling people's surgery. And that just kind of sent me down this rabbit hole of looking at nutrition. And so I kind of explored all these different paths and found that these really crazy, nutty people that were eating nothing but meat, which I thought was crazy. I thought these people are nuts, right? I mean, it's like, why would you only eat meat? It doesn't make sense. Fast forward about a year later after I kind of found these people, I tried it myself and I was like, wow, I really, really feel good. This is interesting. And so I play with that. I wrote a book called The Carnivore Diet, which now is, hundreds of thousands of people have gotten now. And, kind of was at the start of what's growing this crazy carnivore movement. Been on, Rogan's podcast a couple times. I am the co-founder of a company, a nutritional health company, or a digital health company, I should say. We actually take people that are sick with things like diabetes or autoimmune disease or inflammatory issues or any kind of metabolic disease. And we basically have a team of doctors nationwide and folks like that help to get people off medication. So that's what I do for my real job. Now I goof around, like we talked about. Social media is goofy. You just do goofy stuff for fun, for entertainment, just to drive people there to kind of see what you're up to. So you can kind of get an audience, and then you can kind of hopefully inspire them or teach them or something to hopefully improve themselves. And hopefully as they improve themselves, society as general gets better. I think we've got just a lot of people that are suffering from physical illness, but a lot of mental illness, a lot of people with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, things where they can't really function well in society. And then when you have all those people coming together, it makes for a really interesting, but sometimes strange place.
Man, I can only speak very highly of the carnivore diet because every time I went to a vegan restaurant yesterday and it fucks me up every time, man. I got like gassy, I get bloated, and especially with raw vegetables.
Oh yeah, man.
Like I don't know who can eat that, but like for me personally, it like hurts my stomach every time. And if I only eat steak and this eggs, raw milk, I just feel good. I can go immediately on a run. I could immediately work out. I don't have to wait. Like if you eat like bread or carbs or crazy pasta or like things that sit in your stomach like crazy, you gotta like wait to work out. But with a steak, I could always feel like I'm always ready to go, and I just feel great.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You look at the way our anatomy is and our physiology. I mean, when we look at our digestion, a lot of people will talk about, we got this microbiome that's so important. Well, it's interesting because, there are people that don't have a microbiome that literally, I mean, they've lost their colon for whatever reason. Maybe they've had cancer, maybe they've had, diverticulitis or Crohn's disease, and they can live just fine without the microbiome. That's because the hardware in our body is designed to digest meat very easily. We have a very acidic stomach. It's all absorbed in the small intestine. And that microbiome comes in play when you are having to consume plants. And so you have to have the right bacteria at the right time, the right concentration in order to successfully digest and absorb this stuff. And so you're absolutely right. You think about, if we were like wild humans and we ate something, we had to sit around and lay around because our guts hurt. It wouldn't be very safe. It wouldn't be the most effective or efficient way to nourish ourselves. And so I think humans are omnivores. But we exist on a spectrum. And I think carnivore is easier. It's more efficient. If you look at every animal that's ever lived on planet Earth, everything that's ever flown, swam, or crawled on the earth, about 85% have been carnivorous. And the reason for that is just more efficient. You think about if I was going to build a house, a brick house, it'd be nice to have bricks and not straw and mud, because that's really the analogy between consuming plants, because you don't have all the right ingredients in the right concentration. So you have to have extra adaptations and extra steps to get the same nutrition, which makes it less efficient. All the fiber people talk about is how wonderful it is. And it can be, in the context of a sort of mixed junk food diet, fiber's good. It blocks some of that garbage in it, but that's kind of what it does. Fiber actually causes a lot of our nutrition not to be absorbed. So it's inefficient. And, particularly as food prices get more expensive, you don't want to be pooping it all out in the toilet, all your nutrition. You want to be absorbing that stuff. So, and you're absolutely right. I can pound a 2-pound steak and literally go work out 15 minutes later with no problem. And I do it all the time. It's amazing how quiet your stomach is. And you think about any part of your body, if you were like walking down the street and your lungs were hurting, you say, well, that's weird. That's not right. Or my back hurts, or I had chest pain. We accept that as abnormal. But if our guts hurt, we're told that's normal. Well, that's not. It's just normal. I don't think it is. I don't think we should be uncomfortable or in pain with any normal human physiologic process. And so to accept that you have bloated guts or you have pain, to me, it means one of two things. Either the food is wrong or the gut itself is broken. One of those two things must exist. And so I think most of the time, we're just eating the wrong food. And the food we have today, I know you like a lot of colors, but when you're eating blue and pink and purple food, it's like, what is that? Is that even real? Is that, because I'm talking about all that artificial. I know there's some, I don't know how many, well, there's a little bit, I guess blueberries would be the only blue I can think of. There might be a few others, but generally like fluorescent green, is not a normal color to eat. And yet we have food that looks like that, which is crazy.
Yeah. What would you say to those people that say, like, eat the rainbow?
Well, again, this is, when you look at eat the rainbow and you look at the foods that are on there, you're like, first of all, most of those foods don't grow together in the same region. Hell, a lot of them aren't even on the same continent. You're like, how would every human who existed before us been able to eat the rainbow? It's just not possible, right? If you've got
like this exotic stuff,
some food from Ecuador, some food from South Asia, some food from the Middle East, and you're like, that doesn't even exist anywhere together. So that's not a normal human diet. And not to say we've got to try to guess what cavemen used to eat, but I think it's just not been practical. And I think a lot of the reasons we have a requirement for such a diverse diet is because the whole scheme is not correct. And so we're always trying to supplement and fill holes in this diet, where if you eat a diet that is predominantly animal source food, meats, you're going to get pretty much what you need. And I know people look and say, well, what about vitamin C and fiber and things like that? I would just say that those things are not required to the extent that we think they are. I think that you can live just fine. I've lived for years just eating steak. And nothing bad has happened to me. And in fact, I got better and stronger. And I don't think that's a sign of malnourishment or nutrient deficiency. When you're getting stronger and stronger and faster and healthier, it doesn't line up with some sort of nutrient deficiency. So I think the whole eat the rainbow thing, that's an invention. That literally, some of that has to do with the, in the United Kingdom, they came up with, eat your 5 vegetables a day. That was totally made up. That was marketing. There was no science behind it. It was just, it sounds like a good number. Let's just call it 5. And now it's 10 a day or something like that. So there's no real hard evidence to suggest that you need to eat a rainbow. If anything, if you can eat locally, what's grown locally, that's probably, quite good for most people.
Would you say, like, I know that, like, if you have a lot of money and you can get to a farmer's market and you can get your hands on not only organic, but like you really know where your vegetables come from, you might get something without glyphosate. But if you don't have a lot of money, you're just much better off buying some meat because it's not sprayed with all these chemicals and you're not eating all these chemicals all the time. And you might just be, and also like when I eat meat, I can't just keep eating. There's a certain point on steak where I am filled and I can't get down anymore and I'm just ready to go, compared to like bread or pasta or all these garbage where it seems like endless eating where you just shove it down forever. With meat, there's like this like barrier where like your body naturally knows when enough is enough.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, as you probably know, there's these drugs that are out right now, Ozempic, Mounjaro, these GLP-1 receptor agonists, which are very popular, particularly maybe here in LA where everybody's trying to be thin and things like that. And the reason those drugs work is because there's this substance called GLP-1, which is glucagon-like peptide 1, and it is released at the very end of our small intestine in a place called the ileum. And naturally, that occurs when nutrition kind of goes through our stomach and winds its way through our intestines. And as it gets to the very end, there's something called the ileal brake. It slows things down. It says, wait a minute, there's too much food coming in. We got to slow everything down. And that's what these drugs kind of do, but they do it in a massive amount to kind of over-exaggerate it. But actually, beef itself is extremely effective at doing that. So it actually slows it down. Once it starts, your body starts sensing that I'm getting some of this really good nutrition, with the things like the protein and the monounsaturated fat, which is interesting. Most people are associating beef with saturated fat, but actually it's quite a bit of monounsaturated fat. In fact, that's the most common fat in beef is monounsaturated fat. So that slows everything down. So you get that sensation that you're full. And a lot of people on a carnivore or near carnivore diet will notice the exact same thing. I can turn it off a lot easier. Whereas you eat things like bread or, candies or sweets or pastas, and you keep eating and eating and eating and eating. And you're not really getting those satiety signals that you would. And then, of course, the nutrition's not as dense. And so you're constantly trying to make up for this nutrition. And so a lot of people, even obese people, are really malnourished because they've got enough calories, but they're probably missing fat-soluble vitamins, minerals, all these other things that drive them to get protein, that drive them to continue to eat and eat and eat.
With your kind of diet, what do you supplement?
I don't really supplement anything outside of sometimes I have an electrolyte because I sweat a lot. I mean, just because I work out a lot. I mean, I'm always trying to exercise, and so if I'm losing a lot of salt through my sweat, then I have to replace that. But other than that, I don't really find a need to supplement anything at this point. So. And I think, God, what did we do before supplements? I mean, supplements haven't been around that long. So, I mean, there wasn't that much that humans had access to, because everybody, you think about how weird this diet seems. It's like, wow, it's just, I go to the grocery store and there's literally 10,000 products and everybody's grown up that way. But that's not the way it always was. Even, 150 years ago, before we had refrigeration, before we had the ability to bring food from South America and all over, across the entire planet, your diet would have been pretty restrictive. It would have been, what do you have locally? Chickens, some pigs, some cows. Maybe you can get a few vegetables here and there, maybe fruit once in a while. But, this sort of belief that we have this very diverse diet is, I think, a creation of the food system we have now and the marketing that's behind it. Everybody's got to eat, you got to eat this diversity. I don't think that's true.
Where does that narrative about animal fat come from that it's like bad for you?
Well, I think, animal products in general, there's actually a religious sort of slant against that. If we look at the very beginning of the creation of something called the American Dietetics Association, which was the modern beginning of nutrition science here in the United States back in 1917. There were two founders. One of them, whose name was Lena Cooper, was a devout Seventh-day Adventist. And these folks are very much opposed to meat in general, red meat. They thought it led to sexual deviancy, masturbation, lustfulness. So it was thought to be sinful. And there's some truth to that. I mean, red meat, it actually, it sort of makes you more capable of reproduction. There are studies out there that shows things like carnitine in red meat are actually more effective even than testosterone at things like erectile dysfunction. So there are some properties in meat which make you sexually more healthy, so that you won't, because that's what humans are supposed to do. We're supposed to have kids. Otherwise, our species would go out of existence. And so that's where it came. That's where initially it started. And of course, back in the 1950s or so, our president, Dwight Eisenhower, had a heart attack. Now, he smoked 3 packs a day of cigarettes. But back then, in the 1950s, smoking's good for you, right? In 1954, America peaked in its smoking. We had something like 45% of the people were smoking at that point. Now it's down around 13%. Thankfully, it's gotten lower. But they sort of wanted to find a reason for the heart disease that was increasing, and they kind of overlooked smoking and came up with this idea that it must be fat, it must be animal fat, it must be cholesterol. And of course, coupled with the religious overtones of how nutrition science was and still is today, by the way, many of the top nutrition positions in the United States are filled by people that are Seventh-day Adventists. And a lot of vegetarians and ethical vegans actually populate all over much of nutrition science, because they're really invested in this stuff. So it's been kind of swaying the message for 60, 70, 80 years now.
I've gone to the doctor before and heard done blood work and had high cholesterol, and I always like to look at your when you posted your cholesterol. Maybe you can explain like how important cholesterol is and why in athletes sometimes it goes up and down a lot.
Right. Yeah. So this is a really controversial topic, and I don't want people to say that cholesterol, we shouldn't worry about it or think about it, because I think it is considered a traditional risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And honestly, most people with high cholesterol, probably it's not good for them. However, here's some caveats to that. The reason it may go up, there's a couple reasons it may go up. It may go up because we get very, very lean. And when we're leaner, we're generally considered healthier, right? Most people would argue somebody that's very lean is going to be less likely to have disease. And so there was just this year, there's a guy named Adrian Sotomoto, who's a Oxford PhD, who's now at Monterrey Tech down in Mexico, did a really nice meta-analysis that showed the reason that cholesterol is going up in lean people that are eating a lower carbohydrate diet has to do with the fact that the liver has to traffic more energy in the blood. And because of that, particularly if you're in a low carb state, you're going to just traffic more cholesterol. Now, the question is that actually harmful to us? And it's interesting, a paper just today, literally today, the authors just messaged me while I was waiting in the car to hear, I got a message from these guys, just came out showing that people with extremely high cholesterol, if they are otherwise metabolically healthy, don't have diabetes, they're not obese, they have normal blood pressure, they have low markers of inflammation, don't appear to be at any increased risk for cardiovascular disease than anybody else that's healthy. And most of the data we have on heart disease and cholesterol comes from sick people. And so, that's the population we're looking at. So if you're sick, if you're obese, if you're pre-diabetic, which, by the way, the average American right now by A1C is pre-diabetic. The average American is pre-diabetic, which is so crazy. If you're in that category, you need to do everything possible to get that down. Now, if you are able to take care of your metabolic health, get leaner, get fit, fix your prediabetes or diabetes, and all those, and bring your blood pressure down, your inflammation down. At that point, you may be in a situation where the high cholesterol may not be a big issue for you. So I think it's still something that we don't know for sure, but more and more evidence seems to be pointing that it may not be as big of a deal as we thought it is. And probably the bigger deal is probably diabetes. The bigger deal is probably obesity. The bigger deal is probably chronic inflammation. We know people that have inflammatory diseases have high rates of cardiovascular disease. If they have lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, irrespective of anything that's going on, they develop heart disease because of that inflammation is going on. And so it's It's an interesting topic. I think, it's kind of funny, and we talked about these drugs a little bit, the GLP-1 drugs. They have a cardiovascular protective effect, right? We're going to see that. And because they're so lucrative now, they just came on patent. They're going to make literally hundreds and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars on this. We'll see the narrative switch to more of that. It's better to lose weight. It's better not to be diabetic, as long as we can make a lot of money. And the statins will kind of probably fall in prevalence and prominence as the main way to treat heart disease. And I've always said that as long as they can make money on it, that's what it's really about. It's kind of, in a way.
But also, if your cholesterol is really low, it's also really bad, no?
Well, it can be. It's interesting. There are people that want cholesterol to be as low as possible, even to the level like when you're a newborn baby, before you've eaten anything, when you first come out of the mama, right? Your cholesterol is really, really low. But within about 3 months of breastfeeding, cholesterol, in U.S. units is over 200, like total cholesterol, which is considered high. And so you're saying, wait a minute, a breastfeeding baby is now, that's harmful because their cholesterol went high. That doesn't make sense. So the people that want the cholesterol extremely low, they look at this condition called A-beta lipoproteinemia, which is a genetic disease. And those people, they say, will live a normal life. However, there is a number of studies that show that people with very low cholesterol have higher rates of depression in many cases. They have higher rates of suicidality. They have higher rates of violent crime. They often have issues with infection because the lipoproteins are part of our immune system. They may have higher rates of dementia. So we don't know what's going to happen with this. If we, and they're actually talking about a vaccine to vaccinate you against cholesterol. So you give your kid a little vaccine when he's 4 years old so he doesn't have high cholesterol, which is, that's being talked about. I don't know if they're going to do it or not, but that to me is crazy in my view. But yeah, it's not that there are no dangers to low cholesterol. I think there probably are. Again, we'll have to see. We won't know this stuff till 20, 30 years from down the road, because any drug that comes on the market, they do some limited testing. They say it's, safe, effective, it's on the market. 10 years, 20 years later, they pull it and find, there's too many problems. But by then, they've already made hundreds of billions of dollars. They don't really care anymore. They may pay a fine. Like these drug companies will get hit with a $2 billion fine, which seems like a lot of money, but for them, that's pocket change. It's like, here's spare change. Or they built that into their calculation and their pricing. Well, we'll probably pay a couple fine. We don't know. Maybe a few 100,000 people will die. No big deal. We'll just, that's the way it works, unfortunately.
What do you think about raw milk?
Well, I think it's fine. I don't get I understand why some people want to ban it because they're worried about like listeria and other infections. But really, if we look at in the United States, about every year, 20 people get an infection, right? It's a tiny, tiny amount. And the ones that get infected, it's more likely to be raw milk, but it's like getting struck by lightning. It's so incredibly rare. Is it magically superior than regular milk? I don't know for sure. I see the people talking about it has more enzymes, it has more nutrients in there, which is probably true. It is true. However, is it going to give you magic powers? I don't know. It's kind of funny. I'm on this wacky sort of diet, right? I'm on the nutritional fringe, but I'm really skeptical about a lot of things. I'm kind of like, I don't know if that's really really got any merit to it. So, I don't have a problem. I've had raw milk. I drink it from time to time. I think I'm fine with it. I find it crazy that we allow so many other things, but we're trying to ban something like that, which to me makes no sense.
Yeah, I even saw in California you have to it's like pet food, like raw kefir.
I don't know. I think you can buy. I think you can go to literally like Sprouts in California and buy raw milk right off the shelf. I don't think some states it's called pet milk. Mm-hmm. I think every state has a different law around it. There's some states where you just can't get it no matter what. I think about 20 states are like that, and the rest of them are either you can buy it direct or you can buy it as quote unquote pet milk, and whatever. You just have to jump the hoops. But some of it you can buy direct from a farm, but you can't buy in a grocery store. I'm not sure, but I think California is actually, believe it or not, relatively less restrictive on raw milk, which is kind of interesting because California, as you probably know, they tend to restrict a few more. They're interesting in California. They're talking about banning a lot of food additives, which I think is probably not that bad of an idea. Although some people that are very libertarian or free loving don't like banning anything, But I'm like, well, they've banned a lot of chemicals. There are a lot of chemicals that are banned, more so where you're from in Europe than here, as you know.
With your meat, do you eat chicken and turkey, or do you stick mostly to red meat?
I mostly have red meat. It's kind of funny. Chicken to me, it's almost like a vegetable at this point. It just doesn't do much for me. I think the reason, in a way, I think that one, chicken tends to be very lean, and so when you're not consuming carbohydrates, you need energy from something. You can't get much from protein. I mean, you can, but it's not very efficient. And I think about back, if we imagine an evolutionary model where humans, prior to about 100,000 years ago, the technology we had and all that we really needed was spear technology. So we would walk around, Central Europe in particular, areas around like Croatia and not, too far from where you're from. There was really a lot of mammoth hunting that went on back then. This population called the Gravettians were just these crazy, prolific mammoth hunters. And they were very, very tall. They were like, on average, close to my height, and I'm a pretty tall guy. There was huge people because they ate this highly efficient nutrition. But if you think about it, if you only had a spear and you wanted to chase food, I mean, you're not going to get much chasing birds around. I mean, how many birds you got to kill with a spear? How much work is that? Compared if you can take down a big mammoth, which people clearly do. I mean, even in Africa, they still kill elephants very easily. I mean, they need one or two guys and they can take down an elephant. So it's much more efficient. And I think that's how we, clearly you can look at all kinds of archaeologic or anthropologic records where they show like isotope studies where they show what were these humans eating, particularly in Central Europe, where you and I are both from, my ancestors anyway. We clearly were eating these megafaunal animals, so elephants, oxen, big, huge animals, just because it's more efficient. And so I'll eat chicken occasionally, but I mean, generally, I'm like, where's the real food?
I know, and also I feel like that whatever the chickens eat is not like that good anymore. Where you like a cow mostly will eat the grass.
Yeah.
What do they feed the chickens? Like, you got to be very specific where you get your chicken from and what the chicken eats, because initially that goes into the meat and then goes into you.
Yeah, the chicken, they're called monogastric, so they're like a human. They have one stomach, and so we're not very good at breaking down some of these products, where a cow has this four-chambered stomach and a rumen. And so they're very much, because you mentioned glyphosate, I should elaborate on that. So glyphosate, when it's run through a mammal, and a chicken is a bird, not a mammal. So when a cow's a mammal, when glyphosate is run through a mammal, the mammalian system actually detoxifies it very well. That's why they said glyphosate was safe for human exposure, because it doesn't impact us. However, what it does do is it damages our gut microbiome. And the foods that have the most glyphosate are, the foods that have the least glyphosate are any kind of mammalian products. So it would be meat or milk, very little glyphosate. The ones that have the most are things like grains and particularly legumes. And so all these beans and peas and things like that. That if you want a lot of glyphosate in your diet, that's where you're going to get it from. So whether or not that has negative implications, I think it does to some degree. Now, it probably isn't like, it's going to be very small levels, but what happens over time, over 20 years, 30 years of constantly being exposed to this stuff. As you know, glyphosate has been banned in Europe for, I guess, ever since the beginning. We've been consuming that here for probably 30 years at least, I think. I can't remember when we started glyphosate. But yeah, so I mean, cows are, in my view, probably better animals to eat, quite honestly.
My favorite is actually wild animals like venison and elk, especially. When I get my hands on like some ground beef elk, grounded elk meat is my favorite, and just make that for the whole family. It feels even less like watery, and I guess are you very particular where you get your meats from? Is it grass-fed, not grass-fed?
So it's interesting. I eat a lot of both. I mean, I have a lot of ranchers that in fact, in 2 days I'm going to South Dakota to meet with a big cattle ranching conference to talk to them about doing some research around this diet. But so I have a lot of ranchers that reach out and send me meat, which is kind of cool. You know, it's like, yeah, free meat. It's really good. I'm not complaining about that. I usually buy, about a half a cow locally from one of the ranchers that lives close to me. Sometimes I'll go to the store, depending on, if I just need something or something like that. But, I am very supportive of this whole regenerative agriculture. I think it's very important. I think it's something that can make a very positive difference to the environment. I've talked to so many of these guys, and clearly it's one of the right things to do. But when it comes to human health, and again, as a physician, that's really what I'm mostly concerned about, or most of what I deal with. I think you can still get healthy even if you can only afford to go to the grocery store and pick up cheap ground beef from, say, Walmart or something like that. Because I just collect data on this. I've got data on 12,000 people doing this diet. I mean, Harvard University did a study back in 2021 looking at it, and they didn't really find a difference in the outcomes. And so I think you can say that, yeah, I can go to the grocery store and eat meat and I'll be fine. I mean, there's people out there saying, oh, it's awful. That's not really true. However, I do think, as much as you can, and if you can support these guys locally, that makes a lot of sense because right now, most people don't know this. The U.S. cattle population is the lowest since 1950s. I mean, it's down, way down right now. Part of it has to do with drought. There's some other things that have contributed to that. But so, on a worldwide scale, like particularly certain places around the world, like in Europe, they're trying to shut down a lot of these farms or put them out of business and decrease the footprint because they're worried about, climate change and all that type of stuff. And in my view, that's misguided. I don't think that's the big target. I think that has, for what it provides us, this such high quality nutrition, the little bit that it impacts the environment is not the target we should be going after. The short answer is, I think they're both great. I eat both. I think if you're really concerned about biodiversity, sustainability, then yes, use, like we get, it's an election year, as you know. We can't get away from that. It's everywhere, right? But you get to vote every single day. I mean, you get to vote every time you go to the store and spend your money. I mean, that's literally a vote. And every day you're in there buying this kind of garbage food. All you're doing is giving those corporations more and more money and more power so that they have further and further impact over your life. And, if we can support those people that I think are feeding us better, then we should. And I think any way you can do that, whether it's direct to the rancher, locally, or, there's a lot of ranchers that are getting into the direct to market game where they just sell directly to. And I think those guys are great. They do a great job.
You mentioned that you had thousands of people, like the stats. Mm-hmm. And what does the stats show?
Well, so we looked at a number of things. I mean, I first did a study back in 2017 where I had 100 people, which was kind of fun. And we just collected data, and we found the average person after 90 days lost about 14 kilos or about 30 pounds. Their waist circumference went down by 8 centimeters. Their resting heart rate went down. And all the subjective things, how do I sleep? How do I feel? How's my digestion? How's my joint pain? How's my mental health? How's my sexual function? All of it got better.
And this is on the carnivore diet.
It's on carnivore diet, yeah.
But no sugar, no bread.
Yeah, no sugar. I mean, this is basically meat.
It's not like a fast food diet.
No. It's just basically eating ground beef or steaks or eggs or chicken or fish, maybe a little bit of dairy products, maybe a few spices here and there. But that's pretty much most of the diet for the most people. And people drink water, tea, coffee occasionally. That has been very, very, very successful. And so, but like I said, study out of Harvard showed that they had 2,029 people, I think, and they followed them at least 6 months. They had people from 6 months to 28 years on the diet. And I mean, generally the results were extremely good. I mean, they were basically people that used to be diabetics, used to have autoimmune diseases, used to have, being overweight or having arthritis. And by and large, most of those people saw significant improvement or complete resolution. The diabetics in particular, there were 226 diabetics in that study. And of all the type 2 diabetics, almost all of them, I think 92% of them were able to come off all their insulin, which is amazing. I mean, there's no other intervention that's that powerful as far as that's concerned. So, yeah, we got some interesting data on that. David Ludwig's study out of Harvard showed very similar. I mean, well, that was the study I was talking about. I mean, I had similar results. I mean, the 12,000 people we took, I mean, gosh, it was something like 95% improvement in every condition you can think of, everything we could potentially measure.
How is it then possible that this crazy Netflix documentary, remember that with the twins?
Yeah, Chris Gardner's film.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
why is that up, and like, why are they doing this?
Well, I think there is well, I mean, as you know, most of entertainment, most media is there to make money, right? I mean, this is why they do these things. I mean, and who sponsors these things? Well, Chris Gardner's lab is sponsored by Beyond Meat. I mean, his literally lab, he takes money from the fake meat companies. So, I mean, is there a conflict of interest? Well, of course there is. I mean, Chris has said that it's unethical to study a carnivore diet. I'm like, well, dude, I mean, there's literally close to millions of people doing it at this point. It's unethical not to study it at this point, because you just have to. I think clearly, I mean, as you look at the diet that he put people on, I mean, once they stop eating all the processed garbage, you're going to get healthier. I don't care what your diet is. And I think if we could just do that. Now, the problem is, why do people keep going back to the processed food? Why is it so hard to quit? I mean, the most sustainable diet for people is, quite honestly, the standard American junk food diet, because it's cheap, it tastes good, it's everywhere. Everybody wants you to do it. It's delicious. That's very sustainable. Now, it makes you sick, of course, but when you tell people, hey, don't eat that stuff. I know it's good. I know it's cheap. Don't eat it. I want you to eat organic fruits and vegetables and beans and a lot of fiber, which doesn't really taste that good. I mean, it's like cardboard. It's like you're always going to be hungry and you're always going to be thinking about this other stuff. But and maybe you've experienced this. But if you eat like steak and eggs, all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I don't even want that cake or whatever. I mean, because I was a guy, when I was younger and really competing in athletics and really strong, big, strong guy. I mean, I weighed close to 300 pounds. I would eat 8,000 calories a day. I mean, I just ate everything. I mean, I tried to eat a lot of protein, of course, because I was an athlete, but I would eat 3 entrees at dinner. I would eat 2 appetizers and 2 desserts. I mean, that would be a typical day. I'd go out to eat, I'd come, $300 later and at like a regular restaurant, not an expensive restaurant, it was ridiculous. But, I went from that to like, I'm good. Just give me a 16-ounce ribeye and a couple of eggs, and I'm good all day. So it changes your perception and your relationship with food, because so many people eat. You think about why people eat. It's not because we're necessarily needing nutrition. It's because we're bored, we're stressed. It's the time of day. The guy on the TV told me to, or something like that. So we're so hooked into eating for the wrong reasons. So if you can, temporarily move those people away from it, of course they're going to get better, and they're going to have better blood markers or other markers. I mean, in that particular twin study, the interesting thing is they showed, and I'm surprised I actually put this on film, that the vegans tended to lose muscle. I mean, they all lost muscle relative to their omnivorous counterparts, which is a problem. It's like, are you worried about someone's blood marker, which can change every day, or how much muscle mass they're losing? Because muscle mass, as you know, it doesn't come in one day. It takes months and months and sometimes years to put on muscle. And that's really more indicative of what's going on long-term over your health. And so I think, again, what are we measuring? Are we measuring something that can change every 20 minutes? And then how valid is that? Or are we measuring real things that really matter? And that's why I talk about, hey, let's get an imaging of your heart or your blood vessels. Well, let's look at your body composition. Let's look at how you can perform, because that really, to me, indicates what's going on long term. So it's kind of a different way to look at it, because so many people are so used to just, well, I'll get some labs and have the doctor tell me if I'm healthy or not. I'm like, you should be able to look in the mirror and tell if you're healthy. I mean, because I can't tell you how many people have gone to the doctor and they're sick. They feel really bad. Doctor draws the labs and they said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Wait a minute, there is something wrong with me, right? Or conversely, someone will, be very, very healthy, and their labs will be a little off kilter, and they're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Well, maybe there's not. Maybe it's the fact that the labs change. I had, back to when we talked about cholesterol, I did my cholesterol. It was interesting. I had a pretty accurate home cholesterol kit, and I checked it on a Monday, I think, or Sunday. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was 154 milligrams per deciliter, which is considered completely normal, right? Like, yay, good for you. That's low cholesterol, right? I fasted for 18 hours and I did a workout. I checked it again. It went from 154 all the way up to 345, which is considered, oh my God, you're going to have a heart attack. And if that number can change almost 200 points in under 24 hours, is measuring it really the best thing for me? Maybe there's some other things I should measure. So that's something that, I've been talking about for many, many years about this. It's just, there's so many better things we should look at. And, you're fit, healthy, that's great. I mean, that's going to keep, if you can continue doing that when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, that's better than anything else in my view.
Yeah, maybe you tell me how important muscle mass is for aging or disease.
Yeah, every sort of disease you can think of, with almost no exception, is improved by being stronger or having lean mass. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's cancer, dementia, diabetes, autoimmune disease, depression. All those things get better when you have, greater lean mass. Now, you don't have to be jacked, Mr. Olympia. That's there's some, those guys taking all the drugs and all that. That's counterproductive in many ways. But just being physically strong, and probably strength more so than muscle mass. It's probably more skewed toward being strong for your size than having a lot of muscle. I mean, there's obviously a relationship. As your muscles get bigger, you get a little stronger. It's not a 100% correlation, but strength is incredibly important. And the problem is, and most people don't sort of realize this, and when you start getting into your 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, if you don't have good strength, you are going to decline very rapidly. You're going to succumb to all the things that frailty lead to. And just having a decent amount of muscle mass is a metabolic cushion for you. It's a disease cushion. So if you do take a hit, maybe you are in an accident, maybe you get cancer or something like that, you can survive that better by having that lean, metabolically active tissue on your body. So preservation of lean mass is incredibly important. So protein is incredibly important. That is the macronutrient we're concerned about. How you get your energy is kind of choice. I mean, if you like using it for carbohydrates and you do well with that, that's fine. If you like it on fat, that's fine too. It's kind of interesting because I was lecturing to one of the larger strength and conditioning coaches conferences earlier this year. And I said, basically, look, you're going to do best at whatever you're chronically habituated to. So if you're used to consuming carbohydrates for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to tend to do better at that. You're going to struggle on a fat-based diet. But if you actually allow yourself to get habituated to, like I am, I mean, I perform at an extremely high level. I've set world records on a number of sports, just using fat as a fuel. So I think you can, and there's many other people like me, you can do that. It's just a matter of your choice. But I mean, the muscle part is so incredibly important. And it doesn't matter, men, women, everyone needs to do it. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can be in your 90s and still put on muscle. So, I mean, and diet supports that for sure.
Are there any worries about losing testosterone over age for you?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at it in a more comprehensive way. I mean, testosterone, I think I look at it as testosterone function, right? Because testosterone is what we care about. Like, we don't really care the number so much. We care about what does testosterone do for us? Well, it helps us to preserve lean muscle mass. It keeps us not as fat. It helps us cognitively. It helps us cardiovascularly. It helps us in a number of sexual function, which is important. I mean, it's still important, to have sexual function even as you're older. So it's not just how much testosterone you have. It's how receptive are the receptors. It's like a lock and a key, just like we have insulin. We can be insulin sensitive, we can be insulin resistant. If we're insulin resistant, then we need more and more and more insulin just to make that up. So testosterone is the same way. You can have actually not super high testosterone, but you can be very, very sensitive. and still put on a lot of muscle and still be strong and have good sexual function. So it's more subtle than that, because a lot of people will look at it, well, I have low testosterone. Here, let me be on testosterone. And that, to me, it may have some downsides to it, because, it may help you to put on muscle, but maybe it drives excessive prostate issues or something like that. I mean, there's reasons to think about that. No one would sit there and brag about how high their insulin level is, right? It's like, oh, I got the highest insulin. Well, that's great. Is there a problem with that? Maybe you're not very good at putting glucose in your cells, but you can grow a lot of fat, because insulin, insulin resistance is interesting. It becomes resistance in some areas, but it doesn't in others. So it's harder and harder to get glucose into your bloodstream, but it may be easier to put on fat because it's not as resistant to the fat deposition. So testosterone is clearly, all the hormones are important. We need them all. We need them all to function optimally, but I try not to get hung up on one particular number, because I see some people brag, well, my testosterone's higher than you. I'm like, well, why are you so weak then? It's just funny, because you have people that'll brag about some random lab value, and it's like, what does that mean? Show me what you can actually do. That to me is more, is more important.
I know I've seen people before that brag with a very high testosterone number, but they don't look like that. I'm like, it's very confusing, because I guess there much more goes into that than just the rare number.
Right. It's sex hormone binding globulin, how much free testosterone you have floating around. But the insulin receptor, the testosterone receptor is still a really big, important part of that equation. It's one of the reasons, why men and women look different. We have a lot more testosterone receptors in our shoulders and our traps than women do. So women produce testosterone, and that's why they tend to, when you look at like competitive women powerlifters, women are actually pretty close to men in like the squat and the deadlift, if they get the same size muscles. And so, some of them take drugs and they do that, and they can get pretty darn strong, but you never see them with a huge bench press. They just don't have the receptor density to do that. There's women that'll bench 400, some maybe even 500 pounds at this point, depending on how much they have a shirt and all that stuff. But you're never going to see them benching like men, because it has to do with the receptor density and where it's located.
Man, so what do you think about this whole gender thing going on?
Which part of it you mean, like the
gender confusion in kids? And
gosh, do
you think that has to do with diet?
I think diet. I think there are a lot of confused kids that don't feel good for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, some of it's saying, well, maybe you're actually a girl and he's a boy. That to me is like, maybe they're introducing that is confusing to these folks, and it may just be they just don't feel good. I do think nutrition plays a huge role here. I think for any mental health illness, and we're seeing that, the work of Chris Palmer out of Harvard. Now, he's doing a lot of work with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and finding things like high-fat ketogenic diets are remarkably effective at this. And if you look at the average diet of an American kid, it's about 70% ultra-processed food. That can't be good for our brain. And it's no wonder so many kids are on antidepressants, they're on ADHD meds, they are unhappy, they're sad, and they're like, well, maybe if I, cut, muscles out of my forearm and stick a penis on me as a girl, that'll make me happy. I don't want to diminish these things, but I think there's some of that going on. So I think, as a parent, my gosh, at least start feeding your kids properly, and you guys, you're fortunate, this stuff. And, if your kids are getting at least whole, unprocessed, nourishing food, I think a lot of animal products, your kids are going to be a lot more resilient to this stuff, because some of it is, there's things that happen and people get sad and people have depression, but, some of that is probably increased more. Because, if you look at the rates, you see some studies where, 20% of the kids in a school say they're transgender or something. You've seen surveys like that. It's like, that doesn't make sense, because historically it's been 0.001%, and all of a sudden it's rapidly increased. And I think it's part of it has to do with some of the social stuff that we've got going on there. We're trying to be, to accept everybody. And hey, let's not be mean to anybody, which I get. I'm supportive of that. But at the same time, some of it is like, don't do something that is going to, I hate to see a kid that, makes a decision at 13, 14 years of age, they can never change the rest of their life. I mean, that to me is really, really scary, and it's there are physicians that make a lot of money doing this stuff now too with some of these gender reassignment surgeries. It's really, really lucrative. It's a money-making thing in many ways, and I think there are going to be a lot of potential victims from this. And I know this is a complicated issue, and there's a lot of strong emotions on each side. But I mean, gosh, I just, for me, fix all the variables that you can fix before you try to do something like. Because it could just be literally as simple as a dietary change. Maybe 6 months of eating a healthy, actual diet that will do wonders. I mean, it clearly does. I mean, even 5 years ago, and this is what I'm talking about now is probably controversial. Probably people will be mad about that, But even like 5 years ago, when I was seeing people going on this diet, and all of a sudden they're saying, you know what, I'm not depressed anymore. My PTSD's gotten better. I'm no longer addicted to alcohol. I mean, these things were, to me, really interesting, which shows you how powerful nutrition could be. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have some confused, depressed, sad kid that's in a bad situation, that if you could fix his or her nutrition, you might see some of these things resolve.
What do you think about the American healthcare system? Because when I go to the doctor, my doctor looks unhealthy. It's really like, if I had a doctor like you, man, that would be epic, man. Like a doctor that can deadlift more than me. I mean, that is a dream come true, because I don't know, it's like impossible to find a doctor. And when I talk to my doctor, he doesn't ask me what I eat. He doesn't ask me if I go outside, if I work out. It's just this, he gives me 7 minutes. He looks very unhealthy, and they tell you to not eat red meat, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the whole healthcare system is broken. I mean, that's as simple as it is. Our healthcare system is broken, and it's been broken for a long time. That's one of the reasons I basically got out of it and, formed an alternative company. I mean, our company, it's called Rivero.com. We're licensed in all 50 states, and we basically take people that, want to address actual nutrition and other issues, which are so incredibly important. But when I trained in medical school, so many years ago, I mean, I was basically indoctrinated into a system that it is, very good at making diagnoses, very good at figuring out what drugs go with those diagnoses. Obviously, I became a surgeon, so learning how to technically do the surgical things I needed to do. So I got very good at those things, but considering nutrition or lifestyle was not even really talked about. I mean, if it was almost like one sentence in a 2-week lecture. I mean, so physicians don't really know how to get people healthy, really. I mean, there's a few that understand it, but I mean, even then, even in the system, like when I was operating as an orthopedic surgeon, I would see 50 patients a day some days. I mean, how much can you talk about lifestyle and nutrition when you're seeing 50 patients a day? You can't. And so when I discovered this, I was like handing out flyers and say, go read this book. But it's not very conducive to having success with that. To really change someone's diet, their lifestyle, you need a lot more. I mean, you need to sit down for them for maybe hours. You might need support on a day-to-day basis. You might need, ongoing feedback for many, many times, and changing things and trying different things. And that's not what our healthcare system is set up for. Our healthcare system is set up to grind people as fast through the system as possible, get them on their pills and get them on their way, because there's so many of them waiting. I mean, the chronic care, we spend $4.5 trillion a year, and that's like 2018 numbers. It's probably quite a bit more than that now, on healthcare in this country. 4.5 trillion, by far more than any other country in the world. And about 80% of that is on chronic disease, and we do an awful job of it. We're just literally wasting our money. I mean, quite honestly. And everybody's waiting for the newest breakthrough, the newest pill, and we keep dumping technology in there. But that never solves the problem. We're never going to drug or do a procedure or inject our way out of this chronic disease epidemic. That's never going to happen. But it makes a lot of money. I mean, and the incentives are perverse at this point. I mean, what you get paid for, what we get rewarded for, is not, there's a lot of and the patients have become brainwashed into this in a way, because a lot of physicians, you look at like reviews of physicians, are like, well, I like Dr. Jones because he always refills my medicines on time. And I'm like, why don't you get a doctor that could get you off medicines? Wouldn't that be better? You know, where we're going to go as a healthcare system, the allopathic, the main system, we're going to see more and more AI-based delivery of care. So we'll have artificial intelligence that's very smart, that can beat the doctors on the test. Will literally diagnose you. You might stick your finger in a little machine that'll take blood, and you'll get blood drawn really quick. And literally, probably within 30 minutes, maybe you have a diagnosis, and an Amazon drone will deliver your drugs to your house. And a lot of people will love that, because it's like, oh, I can just sit at home and get my drugs and just be drugged and medicated all the time. That's where healthcare is going, because it's so much more efficient to do that way. If you don't have to pay a bunch of doctors. I mean, doctors make a lot of money in this country, right? And they're kind of like this. They're like the speed bump for the healthcare, for the drug companies, and they don't really like that, because they have to take them out to dinner and buy their office food and take you to conferences and that stuff, and that's a lot of expenses to them. So they can eliminate that and just have a little robot do it for you. Oh, they're going to totally do that. So we'll see that. We'll see more and more of that coming over the next 5-10 years, where a lot of physicians find out they're out of a job, because they've been replaced by an AI robot. Which, maybe someone will wake up to that, and then you'll have another, hopefully another alternative path where, like what I'm doing, where you have people like, look, let's actually fix you instead of medicate you all the time. So, people call it sick care, or I remember when this term came in about 20 years ago, I can remember first hearing it, they called it disease management. I'm like, what do you mean disease management? We're not talking about curing disease anymore, are we? No, we're just going to manage it. So you manage people in chronic disease forever, and you just, here's the next bill, here's the next bill. It's just, the whole incentive is not anywhere about getting people healthy anymore. It's just managing these people on. And if you look at the drugs that are being developed, the really blockbuster drugs where all the money is being put on, they're not cures. They are literally, like even these Ozempic pills, right? They're not a one-time shot. They are, take this shot for the rest of your life at $1,000 a month, right? How much money can you make on that? That's how all these drugs are being manufactured now. They had, Goldman Sachs is a big, banking institute, did an analysis about 5 years ago on, said, is it financially a viable strategy to cure disease? And they said, no, it's not. Curing disease does not make money for its shareholders. It does not make sense. So there's no incentive to cure disease in the healthcare system. So you might as well just realize that all this talk about cure, we're going to cure cancer, that's all just marketing PR. What they want to do is keep people medicated forever and can keep the wheels grinding, because that's how they make the money.
Man, what do your colleagues think about you, or the people that went to college with you?
Well, it depends, I mean, I hear from some of them from time to time. A lot of them are pretty. They're some of them are like, yeah, keep the fight, man. Because a lot of physicians get it. I mean, this isn't a surprise to them. They know it. Many of them do. Some of them just don't care. Some are like, well, what else am I going to do on this side? When you think about it, you go to medical school, you defer, you go to college 4 years, medical school 4 years, maybe you do a surgical training another 5 years. So now you got 13 years of not making any money. You got all these debts. You may have a family. And now you want to you got to pay all that back. It might take you 20 years to pay your loans back, right? So you got to make the money. And there's nothing else you can do. I mean, what else is a surgeon going to do? You may go work as a butcher, maybe. I don't know, minimum wage. So you've got all this investment in there. There's nothing else you can really do. So you're kind of stuck in a way. And so a lot of physicians are getting frustrated. They're getting burnt out. They're getting tired of the system. So a lot of them are like, yeah, I wish I could figure out how to get. I get physicians contact me every single week saying, hey, can I come work for your company? Or how the hell did you get out of this stuff? I'm tired of this stuff. They see it. Once they wake up to this stuff, it's like, okay, but I got a house payment. I got kids I got to pay for. I mean, how do you get out of that? That's a tough thing, because there's a lot of people. And it's a struggle for me. I mean, I got to bust my ass all the time and, do all the things I'm doing. So it's not easy. But, to me, I mean, I sleep better. I'm much happier When I was operating on people, it was fun. It was cool. I mean, not too many people get to operate on people. But the level of satisfaction that I have today, it's orders of magnitude. I mean, it's like, I literally have people come up to me, look, you've literally saved my life, or you've changed my life. And I've saved people's lives before, and like they're going to die, not they're not dying. But I see that stuff almost on a daily basis, which to me is it's so worth it. That's why I do what I do.
When did you hit that switch where you were like, I don't want to be in this system anymore?
This is what the first clue, like I graduated with honors from medical school. I was the head of an orthopedic program. I was a really popular, busy, sought after surgeon, and cranking out the surgeries, just doing surgeries. The hospital loved me. Oh yeah, you're making us lots of money. But I mean, I was like, I'm competitive. I'm a super competitive guy, right? So I always wanted to be the top, the best, the most. And then I discovered that I had some patients that I was literally changing their diet. So it's kind of funny. So when we were replacing,
why did you do that?
So we had a lot of patients that were obese, right? That needed knee replacements, right? So we were going to replace their knee. And the problem with those patients is they have higher rates of complications. So they get blood clots, they have infections, they don't heal as well, they don't rehab as well. So as a community of surgeons, we said, look, we have too many obese patients, and when we operate on our complication rates are too high. Let's stop operating on so many obese patients. Let's force them to lose weight somehow. Like we can send them to the bariatric surgeon who will, cut their stomach. We can, there's different ways. And what I tried to do at that time, and I was at that point on this low carb ketogenic diet, I started putting my patients on a diet, right? It was very low carbohydrate. It was higher in fat. And not all of them would do it. Only maybe 20% would actually try it, right? But the ones that tried it, I would have them come back to see me in about 2 weeks. I said, hey, how's the diet going? And more often than not, they say, hey, doc, it's good. I only lost a couple pounds, but what's weird? My knee doesn't hurt anymore. And I'm like, your knee doesn't hurt anymore. We got you on the surgery schedule for a knee replacement. So I said, well, if your knee doesn't hurt anymore, there's really no reason to do a surgery for you, because that's why you do the surgery, to take you out of pain. And so as I started seeing more and more people, and I started canceling surgeries, then I talked to the hospital. I said, you know what? I want to spend one day a week, or one half day a week, talking to people about nutrition and diet and lifestyle. And guess what they said? They said, no, we don't want you to do that. Right? So that was like a switch in my mind. I was like, wait a minute, these people are out of pain, and I'm able to not have them have to have a surgery, which has potential complications.
And less money.
Yeah, less money, right. So that's when I got clued in. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't so much about helping people as it is about, this is a business, this is making. And I was kind of a naive at the point. I mean, obviously I knew there was money involved, of course. I mean, you have to. I mean, that's how you pay the light bills. But when it became, we would rather you do a surgery this patient may not actually need than not. That to me was the switch that made me really sort of angry about what I was in. I became very jaded by that. And so I ended up, spending 2 years in a legal battle. When I finally said, F it, I'm just going to do it anyway. And then it turned into this stuff. So that was back in around 2014, I think. So about 10 years ago, I figured this stuff out.
Wait, so you would continue talking to patients about their diet?
Right. Yeah.
And that would turn into a legal battle?
Well, basically, yeah, they basically went after me and said, because I was ahead of the group, and they couldn't get rid of me because I had a good record. And so it ended up being, this long, drawn-out peer-review thing, and I ended up actually surrendering my position. I surrendered my medical license. I had to fight to get it back. It took me another year to get it back, and so it was just like a whole frustrating experience, because I was just like, look, I'm just trying to, what I think is the right thing for people. And it turns out, as many people discovered in the last few years, if you don't toe the line, they'll take your license away. They'll take your ability to make a living away, because the medical system is so powerful. And, they basically do it. If you have a doctor that doesn't agree, they'll get rid of you. I don't care if it's legal, illegal. I mean, it's like they have ways of just peer review. It's a protected, they can accuse you of anything and you don't even know what it is. They literally will not tell you. We don't have to tell you. We don't have to tell you who said it. because it's a protected process. So, so they say, well, you can't, there can't be any retribution. So it's really an interesting place to be in, and that opened my eyes to that whole process. But the inciting thing was, you guys are coming after me because I want to not operate as much, because I want to help people, was just, to me, kind of mind blowing at a point. And so I mean, I realize that. I mean, I realize that at this point, it's almost all about money. People getting better or healthier or having less symptoms is kind of the side effect of it. That's what kind of draws them in. But I mean, it's really about supporting the machine and just keeping the wheels turning and making as much profit as possible.
Was there a moment where you, or what made you be so bold to really go against it and not just be a sheep like every other doctor and just ride with it and be like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have done that and just stay in the system?
Well, I mean, part of it, I just got so pissed off. I mean, I just, what they did to me just made me so angry. And I was kind of naive at the point. I kind of went along, okay, let's see what's going on here. And once I realized what the actual deal was, I got mad and angry. And like I said, if nothing else, I work hard. I'm a hard worker. I'm extremely competitive. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna fight, one way or the other. I mean, and even today, I'm still fighting to correct what I think some of the wrongs are in the entire medical profession. Like I said, we're seeing, again, I was one of the early ones that woke up to this sort of stuff, but there's more and more people that are jumping on board with this stuff. So I'm just real competitive. I mean, I compete in just about anything, So, somebody says I can't do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try, or, something like that if I have an interest in it. So, I mean, that's, we do have a lot of people that like, and I mean, some days, my life would have been a lot easier had I just went along with things. I would, I calculate I lost probably $8 million on that decision. I mean, it was a lot of money that I had sacrificed, but it's still worth it. And hopefully in the end, it'll come out okay at the end. But, I just, once you know something is corrupt, you either have to sell your soul in a way and just, live with that. And I just, this is not something I wanted to do.
And you've always been this way?
I think it was the first time I was ever faced with something like that. I mean, I remember when I was in the military, because I had a lot of different weird careers. I mean, I spent my first time when I was playing professional, I was playing professional rugby. I lived in New Zealand and did that. And then I joined the military and I launched nuclear bombs. It was my first career. And then I went in the second time and then went in as a trauma surgeon. I was in Afghanistan doing all the trauma. But I remember even as a nuclear weapons guy, I was just kind of like, I wasn't really bought into the sheepness, as a military officer. It's like in a military officer, you're supposed to follow orders, and it was kind of like, I just remember that, particularly as a surgeon, I was like, I ain't doing that. I thought stuff was stupid. I was like, I'm not going to do stupid stuff. And that's kind of, I don't know. I've always been a little bit that way, I suppose.
Even for $8 million.
I didn't know at the time. I just knew, look, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I'm just like, as I look back, I'm like, what would I have done, if I would have kept going where I was going? Because I mean, that's probably accurate about where I would have, been. But, I mean, it's like, what I have now is more valuable in my mind.
Yeah, the truth, and not making people more sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm not starving or anything like that. I mean, I'm still comfortable, and I'm very fortunate that I have a very, very successful spouse. I mean, she kicks ass too. I mean, so she's, it took some of the pressure off for sure. So, I mean, it's just the right situation. I don't know. I mean, it's just like, you see like the last few years with all the COVID stuff. I'm like, had I been still a physician, practicing in a hospital, I don't know how it would have went. But I'm glad I wasn't part of that. I was just like, it's just kind of nonsense in my view.
Do you go to the doctor?
Do I go to the doctor? Not really. I mean, I can check my own labs.
I always wondered that.
Yeah. No, it's I generally, I'm just not sick. It's like I kind of view the doctor as someone you go to when you're sick, and I mean that's really honestly how it should be. I mean we've gotten to the, I have enough insight to any test the doctor's going to get me. I can I can generally interpret it pretty well myself. I mean I've got a lot of insight into that. There is, this belief that we need to go every year for our yearly checkup or whatever, depending. If you're sick and you've got a disease, that makes more sense. But if you're a healthy person, I'm not convinced, you're doing yourself any favors by going to the doctor regularly. I think in some cases it can be counterproductive. Not everybody, but there are people that, they'll go down, they'll get a test, and like, oh, there's something weird on that test. Let's do another test. And by the time you get done, you've got, who knows what's going on. And maybe you have a procedure that was, well, we don't know for sure what's going on. And it's interesting, this isn't for you or not you or I, but like a lot of women do mammography. Like they do, where they have the breast exams. And it's been shown that the screening for breast exams, the blanket general recommendations have actually on net been more harmful than helpful. And the fact that, yes, they catch a few early breast cancers, but they actually end up harming more women with unnecessary procedures and, and sometimes actual real bad health outcomes than they don't. So it's kind of interesting how healthcare is. I mean, a lot of people say the best way to not be sick is to stay the hell out of the healthcare system. There's probably some truth to that. I don't want to just paint it all as bad, but there's certain reasons why, it may not be necessary. Because a lot of it's just like, well, if I get a blood test every year, it's kind of funny. A lot of people now, we have access to our own labs. I mean, you can literally go to Lab Quest down the street and get labs. If you wanted to, you could spend $50,000 a year on labs if you wanted to. I mean, it's kind of a rip-off. I mean, it's too much damn money. I mean, but if you do that for long enough, you'll notice that this test is out of range, that test is out of range a little bit, this is a little higher, this is a little lower. They're always changing constantly. And, what do you do about that? Do you chase it with supplements? Do you change your whole lifestyle? And I'm kind of like of the belief that there are certain principles that make sense. Don't treat your body like a trash can. Don't eat a bunch of garbage. Get good sleep. Don't be sedentary. Exercise on a regular basis. Don't smoke. Don't drink to excess. If you do those things consistently, you're probably going to be better off than 99% of the population anyway. And it's, particularly today. I mean, today, like just by feeding your young children a good, healthy diet, they're in the top 1%. I mean, just by that alone, so they've already got a leg up on the competition. You're already giving these kids such a huge, advantage just from doing that.
Do you have insurance?
Do I have health insurance?
Uh-huh.
I do through my company. We have some health insurance. I'm considering there's an interesting company called Crowd Health who I know the CEO of, and he wants to work with us because it's an interesting concept in that, a lot of the insurance, I mean, this is the way insurance works. I mean, there's a lot of ways it works, but one of the things that's interesting is that health insurance is limited by how much money they can make. They can only make like 15% of the cost of healthcare, right? So that's by law, right? So how would they make more money if they're topped at 15%? Well, you just make healthcare more expensive. So the more expensive healthcare is, the more money they can make. So they're incentivized for healthcare as a general rule to be more expensive. So then they can charge you more premiums and so on and so forth. It's a company called Crowd Health. Andy Schoonover is the CEO of that. And they have a little different model in that it's not actually health insurance. It's just everybody sort of pools their money together. You pay a little fee to pull your money. And then if someone has a problem, like someone gets cancer or somebody has an accident, that money is then taken out and given to that person. And then they negotiate with the hospitals and the physicians because they're paying cash for a much lower price. So it actually ends up being much more economical. And the other thing is because it's not insurance, they're allowed to exclude a lot of people. So like the overweight smoker people are not allowed in. So that it drives the whole cost down. So, I mean, that's part of the Obamacare stuff where you couldn't do that, right? So it protects the general population, so because, you're subsidizing in a way some people's poor lifestyle decisions, because my insurance is, the premiums you may pay, maybe you're paying for a family $1,300, $1,400 a month. A lot of that goes to paying for
I pay like $2,000.
Yeah, $2,000. A lot of that's going to pay for everybody's health that doesn't take care of themselves, because you probably use a hell of a lot less of that, and that's what they're depending on. They're depending on your money to take care of these people that
we don't use any.
Right. It's like, what's that money doing? Yeah.
So you're saying you're paying for somebody being unhealthy,
right,
obese,
right, exactly. And in many ways, you are, yeah.
Because that's most of the people.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like a small percentage of the population uses the vast majority of the healthcare.
Yeah.
It's interesting in that way. And, it's something that I used to see, particularly like the emergency room. Emergency room is very expensive. If you've ever been to the ER, they give you a huge bill, right, for the acute care, the episodic care. We would have people particularly people that were had mental health issues. They would come in every weekend. The same people. I call them frequent flyers. Oh, he's back again. And, it's like they use up like millions of dollars of healthcare a year. And it's just like, well, couldn't you do something better with them? In my view, you just put these people in a nice hotel and feed them steak every day. You could probably fix half of them, and for a lot cheaper. You could eat steak every day and not spend $1 million a year. You could spend way less on that. If you just fed these people appropriately. But, it's like I said, our system is so messed up. But yeah, it's.
So you do crowd. What is it called?
Well, it's called crowd health.
Crowd health.
I don't personally do it. A lot of people within our company are going to probably do it. With our Rivera, which is our medical, the patients of our medical company. So it's something to look into. Maybe they want young, healthy people. That's their perfect people, because it saves money.
Yeah, because I'm so. Like, it seems so crazy that I spend every month $2,000 and nobody goes there ever. Mm-hmm. I haven't been to the doctor, I don't know, in years and years and years. It's
you don't need to.
Yeah.
There's no reason. You take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's right. Like let's say, God forbid, you're in a car accident.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't want to be that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you got to have some sort of follow-up. But something like crowd health is a potential option for folks like you.
So I go with my toddler to my pediatrician. She looks in one ear, looks in the other ear, and then she weirdly just says, has an ear infection. I'm going to prescribe you antibiotics. Okay. And I say, I can't look in. There's not much I can do, right? Sends me home. And then I call my mom in Austria, right? She tells me to to warm up some onions, make an onion wrap, put it around, maybe try garlic drops. I do that, and after a couple of days, or even immediately, my son doesn't have ear pain anymore, and we skip on the antibiotics. What is the incentive of my pediatrician? Like, what do they get why do they always come with antibiotics every single time? And they're not like, hey, maybe you wait, or maybe you try this and then you do that. Because I see that you're very different, like grounded, where you try to not get somebody to do surgery. But I think most doctors or pediatricians are not gonna aim for that.
Well, I think, the question is it really an ear infection? Some of it might be very obvious. I didn't look in your kid's ear, so I can't say, and I'm certainly not a pediatrician, but I think that a lot of it is, there is some level of kind of CYA, cover your ass litigation. Like let's say this kid has an ear infection, and I tell him go home and put garlic in their ear, and it gets worse. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now he has meningitis, and now he has a brain infection, right? They're worried about that, right? Even though 99.9% of the time that wouldn't happen, but it's just that one set of times. So we have a very litigious healthcare system. So there's all kinds of problems here. It's like, well, I'm gonna do this more for my coverage than your kid in some ways, and so there's some of that. Now again, when they put you on, like, we call it empiric antibiotics, we'll put you on some amoxicillin or some penicillin or something like that, some sort of just, this is probably what it is, because 95% of the kids will have this, and it usually will help, and so we'll just kind of do that. Like if you had an actual culture, where you went in there, swabbed the ear, found bacteria, let's say it's an external ear infection where you can actually get some material, and you grew it in the lab, and it said this is a bacteria and this is the right antibiotic, that would maybe make sense. But if they're just saying, well, they look in the ear, it looks a little inflamed. Maybe it's a viral, could be viral. It could be, that's probably the most common reason for it. So that probably doesn't need antibiotics. If we give the antibiotics, probably not going to do anything major. It's not going to probably, unless the kid's allergic to it, probably the kid's going to tolerate it okay. But it might not have been necessary. And it could be that, like, depending on is a kid having a real high fevers? Is he, really, really sick? Because some, kids can get sick really quickly sometimes. It's like they'll just be like playing, and the next minute they're like, like out. So you just have to be kind of cautious in that. And so, I mean, it's I think, again, it depends on, like, if the kid was like in a hospital and they could watch him, they might say, let's do this.
Yeah.
Or if they knew they had reliable parents, which I'm sure you guys are, they could say, hey, look, come back tomorrow if he's not getting better or something like that. But I mean, it's more work. I mean, you think, a lot of what physicians are doing partly is because the only way they can make the living they want to make living is being very, very fast and efficient and streamlined. And
is there no way they can at least lay out the options? She could be like, hey, you got to take these antibiotics, and you cannot come back and sue me, but you could also try the garlic drops and see if that'll try.
She probably doesn't even know about the garlic drops, or maybe she does. I mean, it's something where she's probably going to, like I said, it's like, if you say, hey, as a parent, you say, hey, look, are there other options I can try before this? I don't know if you did. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. And they said, well, we can watch and wait. You can, maybe it's, what else could it be? Because there's something called a differential diagnosis. So you get in there, somebody's got a problem, you say, well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, it could be that. This is the most common, so we'll treat that, right? That's kind of how it works, right? Well, what if it's this one and you don't need this? Well, you probably didn't hurt them too much, but, so it's again, there's when you're treating yourself or your own child, you have a little bit more leeway, I guess, in a way, because you're seeing a kid every day. You're watching them every hour. Whereas I get them for 20 minutes in the clinic, and what if I'm wrong? What if he really does have something bad that an antibiotic needs to take care of? Then because I mean, it's just part of the way the healthcare system. It's part of I mean, there's a lot of, both from a physician side and from a patient side, there's a lot of problems with our healthcare system, and part of it is the fact that we just don't provide very good care. But the other part is the litigiousness. Now, almost all physicians in this country are going to get sued. I mean, it's just part of it. I mean, I had one lawsuit in my entire time, in one of the most sue-happy states in the country, and one of the most highest sued professions, and it got dismissed. It was just basically, you weren't at fault. I mean, it was just like, but I mean, if you practice long enough, it happens. Some people happen to like, it's whatever, I'll just get sued again. Some doctors get sued so many times. This is like, they're like, it's just, and of course the lawyers make all the money. And it's such a money-making system, unfortunately.
What do you do with your kids?
What's that?
What do you do with your kids?
With my kids?
Yeah, you put them to the pediatrician or no?
Yeah, they go. I mean, they've gone. I mean, they don't go very often. And I usually, like my son broke his arm. He was in France and he fell down some stairs and broke his arm. I was in there. They sent me the X-ray. I had to look at it from over there and kind of tell the physician what I thought, because that's what I used to do for a living. He rarely ever gets sick, and so like sometimes, like if he has to go to a camp or something like that, they'll say you got to have a doctor sign off on this or that. But I mean, he almost never gets sick. But again, he eats meat and he eats eggs and drinks dairy products and doesn't eat garbage or very little garbage. And so, I mean, it's not as much of an issue as some people who have kids that are they're in the ER, 3 or 4 times a year, the urgent care, with ear infections and allergies and eczema and, all this type of stuff, which I think a lot of it probably has to do with how we feed these guys.
And do you take medication?
Me? No, I don't take any medication. I'm almost 60, which it's kind of interesting is most Americans my age are on 3 or 4 pills at this point. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And do you give your kids medication?
No, not on a regular basis. No, I mean, like I said, if they had
Or like if they get a fever?
if they have a fever, probably not. I mean, like I said, most of that is self-limited. I mean, a fever is, why do we have a fever? I mean, it's physiologically normal, right? I mean, our body is trying to, rev up all of our systems. It's, the viruses don't survive as well at high temperatures. So it's part of what our body is designed. Now, if it gets too high, you start getting 103, 104 fever, then that becomes actually where it can actually be detrimental. But, if a kid has a little mild fever, I don't really worry about it too much.
Everybody around you eats the same diet pretty much?
It's kind of funny. My wife, she's from France.
Ooh, that's cool.
So she was actually vegetarian when I first met her. She was coming out of it. She had just like survived vegetarian. She was like 20-year vegetarian, and she had all kinds of stomach issues. She thought she had stomach cancer because it was, she was just like everything she ate hurt her stomach.
Yeah.
And, at that time I wasn't on a carnivore diet yet, but I was on a low carb, kind of a paleo diet. And so she tried to transition over there. And it took me, like us being together for 5 years before she would eat red meat. Like she had a hamburger, I remember. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Now all she wants is literally steak. I mean, like she just gets steak every day, or ground beef or something like that. And she'll eat occasionally she'll have a little bit of vegetables, a little bit of fruit from time to time, but she mostly eats meat now. And she's super fit. She's the same age as me. She actually turns 58 next week. She's super fit, super strong, super athletic, super, smart. My children, I've got 4. One that lives with me currently. 3 live with my ex-wife, with their mom. They eat, I know they get a cow every year. They eat a lot of beef. They eat a lot of meat. They eat mostly whole foods. So basically, but I don't force it on anybody. I let them, do what they decide. I don't think a carnivore diet everybody needs to do. I think it's something that, as a physician, I look at it as this is a very effective therapeutic tool that you can use for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, to whatever you want to do. Some people want to do it for many. I've been doing it for almost 8 years now, and I just like it. It's just convenient. It's easy. It's simple. I like it. If you're going to eat a diet, you got to like the food, right? It's just like you can't be hungry all the time. You got to like what you're eating. And if you can do those things, that's pretty sustainable. And for me, the fact that I'm going to eat, when I get done here, I'm going to go home and eat a steak. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Can you walk me through, like you wake up, what do you eat?
Well, a lot of times I don't eat early in the morning. It just, for instance, right now I'm in a phase where I'm trying to lean down a little bit. So I've got to drop about 20 pounds. And so I generally eat my first meal around lunchtime, maybe a little early, maybe 11 p.m. because I usually get up, do a little bit of exercise, take my dogs out for a walk. I've got meetings in the morning. I do consultations.
Yeah. And then, coffee or no coffee?
I never liked coffee, man. I've had 1.5 cup of coffees in my whole life. When I was a 14-year-old kid, I used to work as a dishwasher. And I remember coming in there like all tired, I had to be there at like 4 o'clock in the morning, right? And I remember the cook goes, here you go, kid, have some of this. And it was like coffee. I think it was from the day before. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Do you drink coffee? I don't know. Do you like it?
I like it, but...
Yeah, but I drank it. I was like, oh, this is awful. I can't. I thought it was the worst thing in the world. So I never really liked the coffee. So I just don't do it. I get up, take a shower, do some, workout, push-ups, walk, whatever. Then I'll eat my main meal. Like the biggest meal of the day will be the first one. Usually it'll be like maybe 2 pounds of beef, like a couple steaks.
On the grill or in a pan?
Typically on a grill. Yeah, it's just cleaner. It doesn't make as much mess in the kitchen. Yeah. My wife's always mad at me if I make grease everywhere. So
right.
I go out to the back porch and grill up. I got a nice grill that goes to 1,500 degrees. So it's a nice one. You can make a really nice steak with that.
Gas or coal?
It is a propane grill. Okay. So it's I've got 2 of them. One's from a company called Otto Wild and one's from a company called Schwank, and they both go to 1,500 degrees. So sometimes I'm cooking a lot of steaks. I got them both going, and if I'm cooking for other people. But the steak will be done in like 3 minutes. It's super fast. And so I spend...
Like medium rare?
Yeah, medium rare. That's perfect. À point, on point. I don't know how you say it. How do you say it in German? What's the perfect way to say that? Do you know?
I don't know.
You have to learn that. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Germany in October. I'm going to go to Baden-Baden. So down there, kind of, I guess it's near Strasbourg in France. But so that's my main meal. And then I'll usually
No
have
sauce, just salt.
it's usually just some salt on there. Yeah. Occasionally, sometimes I'll put pepper, but usually I just put salt. I like it. I mean, it's just, if you get good meat, it doesn't need much. I mean, that's the thing. I think a lot of people eat like kind of overcooked. They don't know how to cook meat. Then they got to put all these sauces on there. Because, you go to a restaurant, they put a bunch of sauce, and it's probably because the meat was cheap or something like that. So good meat doesn't require much at all. Just a little fire, maybe a little salt, maybe even not salt. Some people do it without salt. I like the salt, probably because, like I said, I sweat a lot, and I just need to replace the sodium. Then, I might eat again more towards the afternoon, evening, like maybe 6 p.m. I don't like to eat a lot at night. A big meal, particularly a bunch of protein at night, you don't sleep as well because you got to process the nitrogen from the protein, and a lot of times you'll have to end up going to the bathroom to kind of pee off that extra urea, which is what nitrogen ends up as. So if I can eat a big meal early in the day, light meal or no meal in the evening, that generally works better for me. So that's kind of how I do that.
And what would that be at night?
The second meal, it might be either a small steak, maybe half a pound or 3/4 of a pound, or I might do like some yogurt or some cottage cheese or something like that. Maybe a piece of fish, something like that. But that's kind of what I eat a lot of. Sometimes maybe 6 eggs or something like that. I'll do it when I'm doing eggs. I'll have. Usually I don't want to cook unless I'm cooking at least 6 of them. It seems like a waste,
So no bread. No, none of this.
No bread, no fruit, no vegetables, none of that.
No
stuff.
berries, blueberries.
No, I don't. I mean, I have. I'm not religious about the diet. I don't care what people think or what people eat. But I mean, for me, once in a while, I'll have a piece of fruit. Like my wife will be, this watermelon's great. Take a bite, and I'll have one bite or something like that. I'll have like a piece of birthday cake once in a while, like on one of my kids' birthday.
I heard that on the Joe Rogan.
I mean, it's like, it's so infrequent.
No, but it doesn't even matter.
It's only like a couple times a year. It really doesn't matter that much. And really, it is about what you do 90% of the time, which is going to make all the difference. Like there's some days you don't feel like working out, you take a day off. But I mean, I usually train almost every day. I mean, I'm going to train today. When I get back, I'm going to go I'm trying to do a lot of plyometrics right now to develop my ability to bounce better and run fast and jump higher. So I'm kind of focusing on that stuff now.
And so no garbage, really?
No, not really. I mean, other than like occasionally, like every once in a while. But I just, it's funny because I used to love that stuff. I mean, not necessarily pure garbage, but I mean, I wouldn't mind a dessert. I would usually eat a dessert if I wanted to eat. I usually get a dessert. Now I don't do that. And the thing is, it's not that I don't like it. It's not that I don't think it tastes good. It's just I don't want it, which is really. I mean, because a lot of people say, well, this diet is so restrictive. It's so restrictive. But it's really kind of freeing in a way because you're like, you know what? I don't even want that stuff, which is kind of cool because now you have the power to decide. Whereas before, it's like you almost do it on automatic. It's like, let's do it. Well, I get dessert every time. You think about that. Or, there's donuts sitting there. I'm going to eat them. That was almost automatic. You didn't even think about it. It was subconscious. And really, it's interesting. We know that all these particularly ultra-processed foods, when we consume them over time, it actually changes our brain. It changes the neural synapses so that we crave it more. We want it more. We kind of subconsciously just eat it without thinking. That doesn't happen to me anymore. So now it's a very precise decision. Yes, I'm going to eat a piece of cake. I'm going to make that the specific decision. And I can put it in terms that, okay, if I'm going to do this tomorrow, maybe I'll do some extra exercise or, I know you can talk about trying to, before I used to like exercise all the time so I could eat garbage. It's like, I'm just going to always eat. But I mean, it's different in this way in that, I limit it so much to where, I don't want it. I don't care if it's there. I mean, I'm sort of a little hungry right now, but you could have like the most delicious chocolate cake or something I love in front of me. I just like, I'll wait till I get home. I'm fine. And that to me is almost like a superpower to be able to say, I don't need this stuff. And even like socially, because I still hang out, socialize with people. It's not a problem. I just kind of like, I'm just, I think part of that is making sure you're well nourished, and that's part of the problem. When you're not well nourished, you'll eat damn near anything, anything that walks in front of you. Like, just give me that. I'm hungry. And I don't really have that anymore.
Yeah, same with the coffee. It's not very freeing to wake up and like crawl to the coffee machine. It's not freeing at all.
Yeah, it's interesting to see people that they can't even function until they've had 1 or 2 cups of coffee. And it's like they're panicking if there's not coffee around. Like they go to a hotel and there's like, oh my God, there's no coffee maker. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to go to Starbucks. I got to drive 10 minutes to. I mean, it's crazy.
When you see the lines, it's almost like a drug.
Well, it
passing
is
the drug out.
Well, I mean, and really what's happening physiologically is every single day you are going through caffeine withdrawal. When you wake up in the morning and you haven't had coffee in the last 16, 18, 20 hours, you're literally in withdrawals, and that's how you fix it. And so it's really what's going on. I mean, so, when people go carnivore, a lot of them find eventually they can give up coffee. Sometimes I tell people don't do it at the beginning because it's just too much. I mean, you're giving up carbohydrates, you're giving up fiber. There's a lot of things going on physiologically. You don't want to be having like headaches and caffeine withdrawal because that's, well, I don't know, I've never had it, but I understand that it's not very fun.
Man, that sounds really cool though. When you free yourself from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the not being nourished really makes you eat even more garbage.
Right, it does. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like, and that's the thing I tell people when they go carnivore, eat enough. Like people say, well, I want to lose 20 pounds. I said, well, it doesn't really matter right now. What you're going to do to fix yourself long term is you're going to eat enough nourishing food so that you don't want this stuff anymore. So you no longer care about that stuff. And once you get there, then you have the freedom, and then you can start playing with, maybe I'm going to eat a little more fat or a little more protein or reduce the calories a little bit. Then you're in a situation where you can handle that. But if you just go hardcore into, I'm just going to go on a diet and restrict everything, how successful is that? Because 3 days into it, you're like, F this, I'm hungry. Give me the pizza, give me the ice cream. That's what happens to so many people. So you have to go into it with the mentality of this is a long-term solution. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be on a carnivore diet the rest of my life, but I mean to fix that food addiction or that poor relationship you have with food. I mean, I've had women that were anorexic, like go carnivore and fix anorexia, which is really, really unusual because a lot of women die from anorexia. I mean, it's got a real high mortality rate. Like 1 in 4 women that are anorexic will die from that. And they almost never, they have a very hard time curing it. And the way they treat it is kind of funny. I've talked to a lot of these women that were put in these treatment centers, these inpatient treatment centers, and they literally like force feed them chocolate and cake and ice cream to say you cannot like exclude foods, right? There's no bad foods, right? Of course there's bad foods. There's complete garbage out there. There's blue Captain Crunch flavored artificial maple syrup. That's not food. That's garbage. But they force these women to eat this. Sometimes they have to hold them down and force feed them, right? It's like almost being in prison. And I've talked to, that's the strategy. I've talked to a lot of women that have gone through these facilities, and they say they go carnivore, and they just, for whatever reason, they just start eating and they feel more free, and they're just like, they're satiated and they don't have the compulsions to do that stuff. So it's really about changing how you view nutrition and how you view food. And then once you fix that, then you're kind of in a better place, but most people don't get there. Right now we're depending on drugs to do that, like all these injectable drugs, like injectable willpower, right? Oh, I'm good. I can take this drug and I don't want to eat the food. Well, guess what happens? The second you come off that food, you're going to rebound and gain all the weight, or you're not going to be able to tolerate it because of all the side effects. I mean, there's other issues with the drugs that are there. I mean, that we could go into if you want, but it's still not the solution. You've actually got to put in the work. Well, as you know, there's no shortcuts and easy way. Anything that's an easy shortcut always comes back to bite you in the ass. I mean, there's just no free lunches. I mean, at some point you've got to wake up, be mature, grow up, be an adult, and say, look, it's no longer time to eat like a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or whatever it is.
That's a good point. Like, what is the youngest that that was on a carnivore diet?
Well, I mean, there are parents that raise their kids that way. I've seen them that do that, and they do fine. I mean, the kids, quite honestly, are happy and healthy and fine. I mean, how long they're going to do? They're going to go to school, and the teacher's going to give them unless they homeschool them, I suppose. But I mean, I've seen little kids do it. I don't necessarily say that's necessary or I think just not feeding kids all this ultra processed garbage. I mean, it's like if you look at like even formula, like infant formula, it is pure garbage. I mean, the first corn syrup solids, soy milk, soybean oil, canola oil. I mean, all these just awful ingredients, and then you go from there to powdered grain rice cereals, and there it's a little gummy chews, and it's just awful food. And we start these kids out so messed up with their nutrition, and it's no wonder. I mean, right now we're at 30% of our young kids are pre-diabetic, 25% of them are obese. I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, that shouldn't exist, and the fact that it does is directly related to the pure garbage we feed these kids.
Did you know that when formula babies poop so much more than breastfed, because they cannot really
absorb it.
Yeah, absorb it. And with the breastfeeding, they almost sometimes they take everything that they eat in, so there's not as much diaper changes even.
Right. Well, it's easier. Yeah, it's better. You don't have to change all these smelly diapers all the time. But I mean, even with meat, I mean, most people go carnivore, they just poop less. I mean, oh my constipated. No, you're absorbing your nutrition. When you eat a bunch of fruits and vegetables and fibrous foods, you get like 6 times as much volume coming out the back end of you. But also, there's a study from 1978, I think. It looked at high fiber diet versus very low fiber diet. And they found out that the high fiber diet, you lose twice as much protein, twice as much fat, twice as much carbohydrate. So all that expensive food you're putting in your mouth just ends up in the toilet anyway. Yeah. I mean, you might lose weight, but you're not nourishing yourself. And a baby in particular, they need to absorb everything. They're growing their brain. My gosh. I mean, why wouldn't you want the kid to absorb everything you feed them? It's not doing any good for them in the toilet, having all this waste product. And so it's all the, some of the, probably the fibers and stuff like they put in there. I don't know if I think infant formula might even have fiber in it, which probably is a total, I don't know why they would do that, but it's interesting.
Have you seen the photos of a vegan placenta and a normal placenta?
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's one. I mean, maybe it could have been other things going on. I mean, if there was like 1,000 of them and they're all the same difference, and you can make a difference in that. But I mean, yes, I mean, I don't think a vegan diet is optimal for a pregnant woman, for a breastfeeding baby. I mean, there's all kinds of potential problems with that. And I think most health agencies have agreed with that. Now, it's interesting, the American Dietetics and Nutrition Association put out this position paper back in 2016 saying a vegan diet is safe for all stages and all ages, right? That's what they said. And the problem with that study was all 3 of the authors, guess what they were? They were all vegan. One was a Seventh-day Adventist. One of them's already dead now from cancer, which is sad. But all of them were vegan. They're ethical vegans. So there's this huge bias that they have in this literature. And most of the reviewers, or a large percent of the people that peer reviewed it, were also vegan. So like I said, you have all these vegans that are all over the nutrition sciences. There's tons of them in the research. So this study, in my view, it's got some problems with it. And I think, I mean, the kid can survive and probably do okay, but maybe he's losing a few IQ points. Maybe he's losing a few inches on his height. Maybe he's slower on his cognitive development. We know with a lot of the vegan studies out there with the kids, they tend to be smaller. They tend to be shorter. They tend to, in some cases, be delayed cognitively. So why would you do that to your kid? Why not give them the best opportunity? But the same thing could be said about the standard American junk food diet, right? I mean, and maybe the vegan diet as a baby, if it's well put together, is even better than the junk food diet. Maybe, I don't know. Why not give the kids a whole, unprocessed diet that does include animal products? To me, that's the optimal. I mean, maybe you don't have to be carnivore, but gosh, those kids should be. And, you look at any kid, you give your kid a little like ribeye steak to gnaw on, but little, 6-month-old kids like, oh yeah, they love that stuff. They know. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, it's kind of funny because the vegans say, well, if you put a kid in a cage with a rabbit and an apple, they're going to pick the apple. I'm like, man, I got videos of kids trying to shove frogs in their mouth. I mean, they will eat. I mean, certainly if you give them a piece of steak, they're going to go crazy on that stuff. So they know. I mean, the kids can intuitively. I mean, you think about what does your kid spit out? If you try to feed your kid like broccoli, man, they're like, They don't like that stuff. I mean, I don't know. Maybe yours are different, but I mean,
Oh no,
most kids.
I don't like that stuff.
Yeah, I don't
Nobody
like it.
likes that
Well,
stuff.
and there's for a reason for that. Why would you eat? I mean, first of all, broccoli. I mean, most people don't know this. Broccoli was not even around. The first time broccoli came to the United States was around 1920. It didn't even exist in the United States until the 1920s. It didn't even exist as a plant until like 2,000 years ago, where they kind of hybridized it down from a mustard seed plant. So these things didn't even exist in human development, and this is all foods we've created. So, you hear it's an acquired taste. You got to force. And if I put enough butter on it and enough stuff to flavor it, I could kind of gag it down. But like if you go to like a party, you ever go to a party and the guy who brings the vegetable tray with the ranch dressing and the carrots and the cauliflower and the broccoli, it's all raw. No one eats that stuff because one of them, I can remember eating. It's like sawdust. It's like, oh man, this is awful. But the meat is always gone. Man, it's just like, where'd all the meat go? Oh, there's still a tray of the old leftover. Like, go to a party sometime and just see what's left over. And you're almost all, maybe it's a vegan party if you go to one of those. I mean, it might be because eating broccoli, but that stuff ain't good.
Man, so what do you do if you have a vegan friend? I have vegan friends.
Well, I mean, this is a funny thing. I mean, because a lot of people see me as this anti-vegan guy. Yes, I make some fun. Well, the problem is I have a lot of vegans that are crazy. I mean, they're just nutty. I mean, you're an animal abuser. You're raping cows and meat is murder. I mean, those people are nuts, right? And I make fun of those guys all day long because I think they're just idiots in a way. I mean, maybe they think they're coming from the right place, but they're clearly misguided. But I've met a lot of vegans in real life, and my wife's sister and her husband are still mostly vegetarian. They're kind of transiting. They're kind of figuring it out that they're getting away from it. It's not working for them. But generally, it's fine. Let them eat whatever they want. I'll eat whatever. We would go to dinner and we would get meals, and I'd give them all my vegetables and I'd eat their meat. It worked out pretty good. I mean, the only few times I've actually met vegans in real life, not online, or I've done a debate with this really crazy one recently. It was kind of funny. She was screaming at me for like an hour. It was literally her screaming for one whole hour about how cows were the same as black people, and I'm like, I don't think that's true. It's just she was just nuts. But the times I've met them in real life, they've all been nice, and we've gotten along, and we've I mean, maybe it's because I'm big. Won't say anything to me. Who knows? But
what if you care about somebody, right? Like, obviously everybody can eat whatever they want, but right. I care about this person. I don't want him to be eating vegan, right?
Yeah. Well,
I want to help him.
Right. Well, I mean,
and they started because of the propaganda, and now they're like stuck with it because they've done it already since 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. And they think they're doing the right thing. They don't understand the concept of like hunting, and like they have those videos in their head of like the cows with like tumors and getting slaughtered and like having no space and all this stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it depends on how open they are. I mean, a lot of folks, they're not going to see it till they get sick. I mean, a lot of people won't move until there's a pain point. It's like people changing their diet. It's hard to convince a 22-year-old not to eat junk food because they feel good. It's not until they're 45 and like, oh my God, my back hurts and I got diabetes. Then they'll change, right? So a lot of people will not change until there's some compelling point of pain to make them do so. Now, the best thing you can do is just be an example. It's just like, look, man, a lot of people, like, that's what happens around family, because family's sometimes the hardest to change because they know everything wrong with you. They've lived when you were a stupid kid and they know all the stupid stuff you've done. And so you've got to just because when I first started doing this, I did it for like 3 months, 6 months. She goes, how long are you going to do this for? I said, I don't know, maybe I want to try a year. And as I kept going, after a year went by, she really interested, and then 2 years went by. Then she started to see, one, I'm not dying, and two, good changes, I mean, so, you can do that. I mean, obviously, the whole vegan argument, you can talk about, they have their points where they believe vehemently that their way is the best way. And, you could say, well, anything you eat, there is plenty of death that goes with that. You're not saving animals in the real scheme of things. You might be saving more cows and killing more rabbits. Who knows what it is, depending on what you eat. Most of commercial industrial produced food comes with tremendous environmental impact. It comes with tremendous loss of life. That's just the way it is in many ways. I mean, I think, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone that can live a life where they're truly minimizing their impact. I mean, maybe if they live in the jungles of Costa Rica and you pick your own fruit or something like that, and even then, there's issues, environmental and animal issues with that. So there's no real. I mean, well, think about it. What is he or she, this person you're talking about, thinks going to happen to them when they're dead? They're going to get eaten by something. Maybe it's micro, unless they get cremated, but every animal ultimately turns into food, including me and you. I mean, we'll be eaten by worms, we'll be eaten by bacteria, by bugs. So everything turns into food eventually. It doesn't matter if it's 5 years in or 50 years in. I mean, we're all going to turn into something else as food. I mean, that's just haven't watched The Lion King. It's a little the circle of life stuff. I mean, again, can you improve the system? And can you work to improve the system and still nourish yourself? Yeah, sure you can. You go out and, it's interesting because we're in LA and there's a place called, maybe Sage Bistro, like Sage Vegan Bistro. It was a huge vegan restaurant here in LA, like really iconic. And the owner, she'd be a good one for you to interview maybe. The owner, I think her name's Maddie, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to interview her in a couple of weeks. She decided that I want to go to regenerative style agriculture, ethically sourced animals. I think that's better for the environment. I think it's better for our health. And she has vegans protesting her place every single day right now.
I've seen the videos. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think I just posted one today on my thing. So, but that's just here in Pasadena, which I don't know. It's pretty close to here.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so you see that there's probably, if your goal is to improve the welfare of animals as best as you can, by going vegan is not going to do it. I mean, that's all that's going to do is make you look kind of weird. You're going to be virtue signaling a lot. You're not actually truly transforming how we produce food, So I would say if this person is like that, if they're doing it for ethical reasons, I think there's nothing wrong with that. There are better ways to be ethical and actually really make a difference because just by saying, well, I'm here I am eating my acai bowl and not eating eggs and I'm saving the planet. Well, no, you're not. I mean, you're killing, there's still tons of deforestation that's going on in Brazil to harvest the acai. There's still tons of animals dying in that product. So, I mean, you can quibble about the numbers. It's like, well, I kill 3% less. I'm like, well, you're still fine with killing it, right? Because I've talked to these vegans and I said, well, are you okay with, I mean, every year in the United States, we kill 4 quadrillion, with a Q, not a billion, not a trillion, but a quadrillion small animals and insects through pesticide use alone, just in the United States. I mean, you compare that to 4 quadrillion to the 30 million head of cattle that are killed every year. I mean, it's 4 orders of magnitude more. I mean, it's so much more, even more than that. It's like 10 orders of magnitude more. So just to ignore all that, just so you can say, well, I don't eat a cow. Okay, that's fine. But you're still responsible, and you just don't get out of life without this sort of stuff. So, I mean, I think, now, obviously there's there's an environmental issue, there's an ethical issue, there's a health issue. So there's a lot of education that has to occur. And I think that's part of, vegans the Vegan Society formed back in 1944 in the UK, I believe. And they've got a lot of money right now. The Adventist health system is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine is tens of millions of dollars. The PETA, the People for Ethical, they've got lots and lots of money. So they're constantly, and have been doing so for decades and decades now, putting out all this propaganda. And in some of that ways, it supports. You think about what has happened with veganism. Maybe it started out as a genuine desire to be helpful, and maybe it's misguided. That's fine. But what has been happening to it? Now you see Beyond Meat, Impossible Burgers. You got Kim Kardashian, out there hawking this stuff, fake, not even biting it, pretending how great it is. You got all these celebrities that are endorsing this stuff, and it's just pure garbage. But what they're doing is they're trying to take advantage of people's better instincts, their emotions, their desire to do the right thing, and they've corrupted it. And they've taken advantage of it now to get you to say, well, I can eat this ultra-processed garbage instead of meat. because I think I'm doing the right thing. When really all you're doing is further degenerating the landscape. I mean, when you go out and plant crops, like even strawberries, bananas, wheat, corn, rice, whatever it is, if you drive in any agricultural land, all you'll see is one monocrop. It's like one food. That's it. Everything else that used to live there, it's a nuclear bomb. I mean, they've killed everything, pesticides, herbicides. All these animals are killed. All the insects and all the birds that feed them are all dead to produce that food. So, I mean, it's a massive, massive slaughter of literally trillions and billions and quadrillions of creatures to produce this food. Is that any better than a cow sitting in a field? I mean, like for instance, cows. I mean, the average cow in the United States will be slaughtered around 2 years of age, which, it seems young, and it is. However, the average cow in the wild, or like a ruminant animal, let's say a deer. Deer and cow are kind of the same ruminant species. They did studies looking at deer, and they took them at babies. They tagged them, and they said, well, how long do they live? On average, about 60% of them are dead before 32 weeks. They don't even make it out of babyhood. They're still kind of, small animals. And they get killed by predators. I mean, they get eaten to death, they die of starvation, or they get some sort of injury and they, get infected or die. So that's their life. Now you take a cow that's born, and even in a feedlot system or raised on a ranch, 99% of them are going to make it all the way to full adulthood, and then they will be slaughtered for meat. And their death will be, it's still a death, right? You're still killing them, but it'll be quick. It'll be quick. It'll be pain. If I had like my choice and it was like I'm 95 years of age and they're like, how are you going to die? You can have, cancer or dementia. They may just give me a bolt to the head. It's just like, boom, I'm done, So, they generally, and if you ever talk to ranchers, and I've talked to lots, I've been on a lot of ranches, these people care tremendously about their animals, And again, there's differences between pigs and chickens and cows. That's one of the reasons I prefer cows, because I think they're treated a little bit better, quite honestly. Not that they can't be pets. These people think, well, I'm going to take a cow home and make it my pet. Try putting your cow in your house and see how you do with that. They're not, because most people that become vegan, the only real interactions with animals they've really had, like real interactions, are maybe their dog. And I've got 2 dogs. I love my dogs. I treat them like little babies. Or, they're friendly. I would be really sad if something happened to my dogs. But at the same time, I realize this dog is not the same as a cow. Right. It's just like, yes, they both have cute eyes and they make cute faces, but there's very specific reasons why we have these animals, for food. They're bred for those purposes. Dogs are, why did dogs first accompany humans? They helped us hunt. That's what they did. That was their purpose, was to help us hunt and maybe guard, alert us to danger and things like that. So they have a very useful purpose where there's no such thing as a hunting cow. You're not going to take a cow out hunting. Good luck. It's going to be eating grass the whole time,
Do you follow Bill Gates buying all the farmland? Did you follow that whole thing?
Yeah, I'm aware of that for sure. Yeah, Bill Gates is the largest single owner of farmland in the United States. He's obviously in favor or invest in things like synthetic meat. Is it problematic? Potentially. We have China buying up a lot of our farmland as well. So, there are some issues with that. And if you look at it, I don't know if you saw, like recently in Holland, there was a lot of concern, the Netherlands, about, these farms being, turned, sort of taken over. Like they were concerned that 3,000 farms were going to go out of business to sort of mitigate nitrogen emissions through the fertilizer, right? And everybody's up in arms around that. But most people don't know that. In the United States, in the last 50 years, we have lost something like 750,000 ranches in the United States. Every year, 10,000 ranches go out of business in this country. And it gets replaced by urban sprawl, business development, parking lots, malls. Some of it gets bought up by bigger corporations. So we have, some real concerns around that. And, like I said, if we talk about the average cattle rancher in the United States, its age is like 63. So, we could get in a situation where everything's coming from a factory. If we don't, as a population, some of us go into farming, some of us go into ranching, some of us, and certainly support those guys. So it is, it's something like I said, I'm going to South Dakota in 3 days. I'll be there talking to a bunch of all these guys and trying to figure out ways to, one, support the research I'm trying to get done. So it shows that how valuable meat, particularly beef, is to human health. So I mean, yeah, it's a real problem and I think Bill Gates, he's kind of weird in what he talks about. He's talking about genetically altering the cows. I mean, I think he is sort of realizing that cattle can be good. And I think they can. I think they certainly, in fact, I interviewed this guy. His name's Alejandro Carrillo. He's down in Chihuahua, Mexico, and he's a regenerative rancher. And he's taking the desert out there and turning it green. I mean, he's literally taking pure desert and turning it into green, lush pasture lands. And he's changing the climate. Like, it rains more there now. It's kind of interesting. You have these microclimates that perform or that form. And when I was asking him, I said, "Hey, Alejandro, how many cows do you think the earth could reasonably sustain?" Because he knows, he goes all around the world and knows what's around. And right now there's about 1 billion head of cattle in the United States. You know where most of them are? Do you know where the biggest place in the world that has cattle?
Is it Argentina?
It's India.
India.
They're sacred, right? They have 200 million head of cattle, plus another 100 million buffalo. The United States only has 90 million, right? So India has more cattle than anywhere else in the world. Second number biggest is Brazil with about 200 million or 220 million, I think. So, but what he said was, and I thought he said, the world could probably very easily sustain 5 billion head of cattle, like 5 times as many cows. And if we did that, like, properly with Regenerative, we would bring back all the wildlife as well. You would see more foxes and deers and butterflies and rabbits. And so that's how we could, sort of change Earth in a way that would be better for everybody. A lot of people lament the fact that most of the wild animal population is gone. I mean, most of the animals on Earth are now domestic animals. They are cows, sheep, things like that, because all the farming practices, all the degenerative practices have done that. And so, we can use these animals for very good if people have the will to do so. But it's having people understand. So vegans were to put their energy there instead of screaming and yelling in front of restaurants and telling people they're still going to eat meat to not eat meat. I mean, you think about how effective are they? I mean, they've been screaming about this stuff for 50 years. It's still 1%, maybe 2%. So it's like, what are you trying to change? It's like trying to change a lion from eating meat. It's not going to happen. I mean, this is who we are as a human species. And I know they're like, well, technology and we have supplements and all this stuff now. But the reality is it's not going to happen. Just like the world's not going to be carnivore. I'm not out here trying to proselytize and say the whole world needs to go carnivore, because I think it doesn't make sense to do that. But I mean, I think that if you really wanted to make an environmental difference and you wanted to make an animal welfare difference, not an animal rights. I mean, do animals, do they need to vote? Do they need to be able to get car driving licenses and do poetry? I mean, they can't do that stuff. All they can do is walk around and eat grass. And, they don't need rights. They need welfare, which is different. And people that take care of animals every day understand animal welfare. They live with these animals. They spend generations with them. They know what these animals need and how they thrive. I mean, it's sort of a mistake. People think, well, particularly with cattle, they're like, well, when a cow is sick, the rancher doesn't do it. I mean, they lose money on that. I mean, it's not in their best interest to have a sick animal. They want a healthy, vigorous, well taken care of, not stressed out animal. That's what's going to give them the most return on their investment. And you get these ranchers that are in Montana in January when it's 25 degrees out, zero, and there's a calf, and they're out there at 2:00 in the morning taking care of these animals. They bring them into their house. I mean, these people really care about animals. Where an animal protester, an animal rights protester, I mean, they may blah, blah, blah in front of a restaurant and stand up there and meet as murder or something. They don't really care. They don't do anything. They're not out there rescuing. When there's these floods and, fires that have occurred in the last few years, you don't see these guys out there. You see the ranchers out there trying to save these animals. But these other guys they're in their apartment in LA on the internet, talking noise. So anyway.
And at the end of the day, they're using their freaking iPhone that has
right. cholesterol in the screen is derived from animal products, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Yeah, not only that, also how they get the lithium batteries out of freaking Kenya
Oh yeah, yeah.
with human slavery, and
Well, that's okay because humans aren't as good as animals, apparently, right?
to them,
Yeah.
man, that was good, Shawn.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Sure, appreciate it.
Let me know how can people tell me again about your program.
Yeah, so, and I don't know how old your audience is, but I mean, we at Revero.com, it's Revero. We are, we're a healthcare company licensed in all 50 states. If you have chronic disease, metabolic disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, any autoimmune disease, and inflammatory disease, we are taking patients. There's a waiting list right now, unfortunately, so we got to work our way through that. But you can get on our waiting list. Just go to Revero.com and sign up on the waiting list. As far as where I am at, I'm on social media. I'm on YouTube at Shawn Baker MD. I also have a TikTok. You got a huge TikTok. You're like 16 million. That's ridiculous, man. I can't believe that. Because I'm on. I've got a little account on TikTok. I think I just hit 100,000. So I'm like, I'm not the TikTok guy, but I'm on Instagram at Shawn Baker 1967. So SHAWN BAKER 1967, and then I'm on, I guess, X, which used to be Twitter, at SBakerMD. So that's where you can find me.
One more thing that I wanted to say is I feel like podcast is really like changed my way of thinking, and I think it does that for a lot of people. Where like somebody screaming at me for vegan or against meat or for meat, it doesn't really do much in these like 10 seconds. But if I hear somebody like you go on Joe Rogan, speak 2 hours or 3 hours and really elaborate, and then it makes just so much more sense, and you can really have an impact on somebody's life if in these long form content, and that's why you make those little bits like those where you with that big knife when you eat your stuff, but eventually they'll end up on a long form podcast, and they can really hear your point of view, and that can really have impact. Like that really changed my life when I heard the first time somebody talk about carnivore, and when I listened to your podcast on there, it makes you really be like, you know what, I might give that a try, because I do not feel like optimal. I do have brain fog sometimes. I do feel achy, and I do want to give that a try. So I think podcast is really here to make a change.
Yeah, I mean, it's, social media, I mean, it's what, you got like 3 seconds to make an impact on a reel. So there's a lot of just over-the-top goofy stuff you got to do, and it doesn't necessarily get into the nuances required. And like I said, most people, when they meet me and talk to me, like, wow, this is kind of a reasonable guy. He's not crazy, It's just like, because I'm a very sort of conservative in a way about my thought. I mean, I try to be fair and not make big absolute proclamations. Based on what I've seen. It's the only reason I'm doing this is because I have been blown away by the amount of success people have had with this. And that's the only reason I do this. Literally. All the other stuff is all, and it's just like, as you know, social media is now entertaining people. I mean, you got to try to do that. So maybe I'm eating a big old steak while some crazy person's screaming next to me. I mean, it makes for fun clicks and entertaining views, but I mean, really, the reason I do that is so that I can have these longer conversations and hopefully impact people in a way that hopefully will make us all better as a society and as individuals. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you.